Hey guys, it's Sam, and welcome to Caps Lock, a podcast designed to help you live bigger, better, louder, and longer. Before we get started, I just want to thank you guys for listening and for giving this a chance and for coming here in pursuit of your best self. This is a space where we are going to grow together, and my hope is that it helps you go forward confidently, unapologetically, and with purpose. It's time to live your life in Caps Lock. If that mission feels aligned for you, hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode, and let's dive in. Good morning, you guys. I am coming at you live just a couple of days after our IRL hang for the community. We did a sort of farewell party at the Rumble Training Studio on the Upper East Side of New York because unfortunately that studio is closing, and it is literally like my favorite workout studio that exists. So that was devastating, but so many Caps Lock listeners came out to hang, and it was an amazing workout. We had some amazing brand partners. We just had like the best time ever. And I'm really devastated that the studio is closing, but every time we do one of these events, it reinvigorates my vision of doing a ton of them. So the next one we'll probably do, if nothing else comes up before then, which sometimes it does, will be in December because Caps Lock is turning 1. Oh my God, I'm emotional. So keep an eye out. We'll probably start planning that pretty soon because it is the end of September right now. And I like to plan ahead. I like to have enough time to get you guys really kind of like an intentional plan thrown together. For example, this Rumble training workout, we actually put together pretty quickly on a tight turnaround. But the swag bags, I'm having kind of like a revelation about these swag bags. I think a lot of them are really wasteful. And there's so much stuff. Like I'm not even kidding you. If I were to go away for a week, I would come back to like 30 packages of PR. So much stuff that I didn't even like ask for or like opt into. And so I'll end up getting products that I literally like can't use. Like it'll be a supplement that interferes with my current supplement stack or a skincare product that like I don't have room for in my routine, and I cannot change my skincare every week because I have sensitive skin. It's not recommended. Anyway, all that said, I was trying to be really intentional with the swag bags for this past workout. And so my kind of philosophy was like, make everything edible. I put some of my favorite supplement brands in there, some of my favorite healthy snack brands in there. I put a sparkling, like a clear sparkling beverage called Voom, and it's protein in a sparkling canned beverage. It was so good. 10 grams of protein. Amazing. So stuff like that. And then obviously everyone got a hat. And the only other thing we put in there that wasn't a supplement was Serena Kerrigan's card game, Let's Fucking Date, which I think is so fun and very reusable. Like I literally leave it in my purse for girls' nights. And it's really fun to play with. So anyway, I tried to not just like give a bunch of random skincare products and like hair care products and wellness products because realistically, that's not the vibe for everybody. And also, our workouts are co-ed, and sometimes like our swag bags really skew girly pop, and I always feel bad for the dudes. So anyway, I was really happy with the swag bags turnout, and I got so many texts after the event being like the products were amazing. Shout out to all the brands, Hormonals Chormbles, Voom, Masa, Gorgie, Serena Kerrigan. Love you guys. And that was sick. One more life update because I have like a lot to get through today and we're on a time limit, is on September 27th, which is next Saturday, in New York City. I am doing the live podcasting segment at, I think, the world's first non-alcoholic festival in New York. All day there are going to be brand activations, DJs, wellness activations, breathwork guided meditations, merch, food hall, like kind of the same as like any other wellness fitness expo, except the goal of this one is to create kind of a third space and a fun event and activity for people in New York to do that's not centered around alcohol, which I have so many friends in New York who are, even if they do drink, they're like, there's nothing to do in this city besides eat and drink. Now, obviously, I disagree with that because New York is like one of the biggest and best and most sophisticated cities in the world. There's plenty to do. But I understand the vibe of like when you want to go on a date, when you want to do something with your friends, so much of socialization in New York is restaurants and bars. So I get it. But this festival is called Drinks with Benefits. It's on Saturday, September 27th. you can come watch the live podcasting. I'm going to live host 3 episodes in a row. The topics are dating when you're sober, dry, or sober curious, the actual impact of alcohol on your health, mental and physical, with doctors, dietitians, internal medicine, and therapists. And then the third one is creating and fostering and nurturing communities that are not centered around alcohol. And so these conversations are going to be great. If you can't make it IRL, the episodes are actually going to air on Caps Lock. So you will be able to listen to the conversations anyway. But I actually have a couple friends who are like, I want to come and see this happen in real life. And it's going to be really fun and really cool. And the whole event is awesome. Some of the partners are really cool, like Cipriani, Gia, Kin Euphorics, like brands that you know and that you love and that are sick. So anyway, come. There is a link in my bio and also a link in the show notes to buy tickets. And that's the tea. This episode is brought to you by Whoop. Whoop is the only wearable that turns your health and fitness data into personalized guidance. I've been wearing my Whoop for over 2 years now, and I can confidently say that the new model is an amazing upgrade. The new device is 7% smaller than the previous model, and the new battery lasts for 2 full weeks before you need to recharge. But those aren't even my favorite features. First, Whoop now tracks women's cycles with hormonal insights. We talk about our hormones all the time on Caps Lock, and we know how much they affect our health and wellness, not to mention our day-to-day experience of the world. This is huge. Second, the new Whoop includes a feature called Health Span, which tells you your physiological age and how your daily habits impact your pace of aging. Then gives you custom advice for slowing your pace of aging and ultimately lowering your Whoop age. And third, Whoop now offers heart health features, including on-demand blood pressure and ECG readings, so you can check in on your heart anytime and share results with your healthcare provider. This is important for everyone, but especially as my loved ones start to get older, I've gotten them all on the new Whoop because it could literally be a lifesaver. You know how I feel about my health, proactive and preventative. And the new Whoop is my #1 teammate in wellness. Join now at join.whoop.com/Samantha Fair. That's join.whoop.com/Samantha Fair. Okay. If you listened to last week's episode, we did a whole really long episode about baking in science-backed protocol into your daily routines. And while I was talking about the AM skincare routine part of my day, I mentioned that I use SPF. And right now, and over the last, couple months, basically since summer started, I would say, I've been hearing all over the internet that sunscreen causes cancer, has endocrine disruptors. Like, there has been so much slander about sunscreen. Now, this actually comes at the same time that we are seeing truly frightening levels of tanning from Gen Z. And that is something that literally astounds me. But this is also the same group of people who brought back smoking, cigarettes, vaping, that kind of stuff. So I guess I shouldn't be that surprised. I guess I just had higher hopes because we have so much information available to us. But, I would say one of the primary sources of misinformation for young people right now is TikTok, because everyone wants to make a sensational claim and get their views and get their clicks. And so I think also the prevalence of TikTok in Gen Z is probably part of why all these bad habits are coming back. Anyway, before we dig into the sunscreen conversation, which we're really going to do, I want to talk quickly about the Gen Z tanning problem. A 2024 survey, and I want to clarify, not study. This is a survey, which means the answers are self-reported. And something that comes up with surveys is if they're kind of like bad habits, people will underreport them. For example, if someone did a survey on how much adults in New York City drink, a lot of people who drink 5 to 10 beverages, alcoholic beverages a week, will be like, oh, 2 to 4. And it's not because the people conducting the survey are shame on you. They're just doing unbiased research. But there tends to be a little bit of kind of self-judgment and self-protection. And people don't want to admit how much they're drinking, how much they're smoking. And that's kind of the tanning, I think, is one of those things too. So I do want to say that it's possible that these numbers are actually underreported and they're still fucked up. So let's talk about them. A 2024 survey published by the American Academy of Dermatology showed that 28% of Gen Z respondents said that getting a tan was more important to them than preventing skin cancer from UV radiation. 52% were unaware of one or more sunburn risks, including increased risk of skin cancer and premature skin aging, basically the two biggies. 37% only wear sunscreen when they're nagged by someone else, like a partner or a parent. And while over 50% of US adults scored an average grade of A or B on sun protection knowledge, when they just focused on the Gen Z survey respondents, that grade actually dropped to D or F. This is so terrifying, you guys. I cannot stress enough how dangerous this is. And to everyone listening right now, I beg you to share this episode with your loved ones who are in Gen Z because it could quite literally be the difference between life and death. I'm going to read you a quote from a feature in Cosmo. For those of you who don't know, I used to work at Cosmo, so I actually saw the reporting, the quality and the integrity of the reporting on pretty serious topics from behind the scenes, and I trust the reporting that is done at Cosmo 100%. So I'm going to read you a quote from a feature in Cosmo. And this quote comes directly from a board-certified dermatologist named Noreen Galaria. And here's what she said. As a 50-plus-year-old dermatologist who has been seeing patients for decades, I can definitely say that Gen Z is tanning far more than millennials and Gen X ever did. I thought that tanning on purpose would go the way of smoking, but it's made a comeback and its harmful effects will last far longer than things like cardigans and platform sneakers. Now, this dermatologist goes on to say, and already said, but goes on to emphasize that Gen Z is actually tanning more than millennials and Gen X ever did, which seems like absurd, again, given the absolute sheer volume of information we have access to today. And I almost wanted to challenge that claim because all of the like celeb photos from like the early 2000s and the 90s have all these like crazy tans. But I think a lot of those tans were maybe fake. But also, this dermatologist follows up that original claim by saying the following. This generation has the idea that they can damage their skin, and then when the damage becomes visible, they can save up their money and get a procedure to reverse what they've done. She adds that this summer alone, at least a dozen teens have said to her, remember how Lindsay Lohan used to have all those freckles and sun damage as a teen? Well, she got some peels and lasers, and now her skin is flawless. So if I do get sun damage, there are a ton of ways to reverse it. Obviously, and I feel like I shouldn't have to say this, but obviously there is enormous issue with this logic because while there are options for treating visible sun damage, though to be clear, you cannot always make that go away, the moment your skin is damaged by the sun, literally even one time, your risk of those damaged cells continuing to mutate throughout your life and eventually giving rise to skin cancer go up tremendously. Now that I mention it, great point, Sam. Moving on. Why don't we use this opportunity to segue into like a very little brief dig on the health implications of UV radiation exposure? The first thing I want to say loudly and clearly is that there is no safe way to get a tan. It is inherently unsafe for your skin to tan. Tanning is the visible result of genetic damage to our cells. Solar radiation, ultraviolet or UV radiation, including UVA, UVB, UVC rays, and ultraviolet emitting tanning devices, are all classified by the WHO as Group 1 carcinogens. More people are diagnosed with skin cancer each year in the US than all the other cancers combined. At least 1 in 5 Americans will develop skin cancer by the age of 70. Approximately 86 to 90% of all skin cancer cases are attributed to UV radiation. Those are just some facts that are so unfun that you almost have to be like, what the fuck are we doing? Now, the most common cancer in the world is skin cancer. And of the skin cancers, about 8 in 10 cases are a type called basal cell carcinoma. An estimated 3.6 million cases of BCC are diagnosed in the US each year. 3.6 million in the US alone every year. This type of cancer grows slowly, but if it goes unnoticed, undetected, or untreated, it can invade your bones and other tissues beneath your skin. And if not treated fully, it can recur in the same place. And people who have had basal cell carcinoma once are also much more likely than other people to see new basal cell skin carcinomas pop up in other areas on their body. So one time, and you're more likely for the rest of your life to have recurrences either in the same place or other places on your body. The second most common type of skin cancer is called squamous cell carcinoma. And while it is less common than basal cell carcinoma, it is also much more likely than basal cell to penetrate deeper into the layers of your skin and also to spread cancer to different parts of your body. Cool. Approximately 1.8 million cases of squamous cell carcinoma are diagnosed in the US every year. It is estimated that at least 65,000 people in the United States die of these two and other non-melanoma skin cancers every single year. And the third most common type of skin cancer is melanoma. This is one that you've 100% heard of. If you haven't heard of the other two, I'm a little bit concerned. But if you haven't heard of melanoma, I urge you to get out from under your rock. Now, I think a lot of us have heard this stat that's like one bad sunburn doubles your risk of melanoma. Different sources have different things to say about this, but like not dramatically different. You know what I mean? Some sources say that childhood sunburns are worse than other kinds of sunburns because your skin is more sensitive. I don't know. So I read a ginormous meta-analysis published in the National Library of Medicine. It's linked in the show notes. In this meta-analysis, researchers reviewed over 1,300 research papers, assessed 270 of them in great detail, and also considered data from 51 independent study populations. And they found that every single sunburn you get significantly increases your risk of developing melanoma, no matter your age. And actually, if you think about it, like childhood is so short, adolescence is even shorter, adulthood is really long. So like actually, since every single sunburn increases your risk, adulthood is actually your highest risk time because it spans like 50 years or actually more than 50 years, depending on how long you live, right? So actually, a lot of people get diagnosed with melanoma in adulthood. Anyway, overall, most sources agree that between 1 and 5 blistering sunburns can up to double your risk of being diagnosed with melanoma. And that's fucked up. Melanoma is much more dangerous than other types of non-melanoma skin cancers. It's actually known for its tendency to spread to other parts of the body, including vital organs like your brain, your lungs, your liver, for example. And besides the quality of life issues that arise from having cancer, survivors of melanoma are unfortunately also at higher risk of developing different types of cancer entirely, including breast cancer, prostate cancer, super deadly, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, thyroid cancer, and several others. Now, in 2025, an estimated 212,200 cases of melanoma will be diagnosed, an almost 6% increase year over year, and a 42% increase over the past 10 years. 10 years in which we have learned so much about the dangers of UV radiation, 10 years in which technology has advanced so much to make sunscreens totally lovable parts of your skincare routine, 10 years in which we've done so much scientific advancement, so much research, so much knowledge gathering. In those 10 years, 42% increase in diagnosed cases of melanoma. That is so fucking disappointing. The number of melanoma deaths is expected to increase by 1.7% between 2024 and 2025, resulting in approximately 8,500 deaths this year in the U.S. alone. And don't forget that is on top of the 65,000 people in the U.S. who will die of non-melanoma skin cancer this year. And then this next part, we know, right? Skin cancer is bad, but like, I don't know if we do, since all these Gen Zers literally care more about looking tan than getting skin cancer. So I don't know if we know, but like for those of us who know, we do. And then this next thing I'm going to say is kind of less about your health and more about your appearance. But I figured I would mention it anyway, since it's pretty much the top thing people think about when they think about UV exposure after the cancer, ideally. But a study conducted in 2013 attributed approximately 80% of visible aging, like wrinkles, sagging skin, sunspots, discoloration, uneven pigmentation, to UV exposure. Not genetics, not just getting older, not gravity, not diet, not stress, just UV exposure. 80% of why you look old and fucking wrinkly is because of the sun. So, Gen Z, I'm gonna need you to do better. If not because of the deadly cancers, then at least because of all this visible aging and how it's not all reversible. And the price you pay to look good now for a couple years is gonna be maybe cancer and death in your older years, and at least looking old and terrible in your later years. Sorry, it like makes me angry because I think it's actually stupid. Now, this brings us to what we can do to prevent skin cancer. And the number one controllable way to prevent skin cancer caused by UV radiation is to practice sun protection, whether that's by covering up with protective hats, sunglasses, clothing, by staying inside or in the shade, although we all know you can still get sunburns and sun damage and skin cancer through cloud cover. About 80% of UV rays make it through the clouds. So, like, a cloudy day is actually not better for your sun damage. And even if it's not cloudy, but you're just like in the shade and sunny outside, especially if you're near a body of water, the water reflects the UV radiation right up at you. So, like, you're not really 100% safe in the shade, but like, it definitely helps if you're doing the other things, i.e., covering up with clothes. And the third thing, applying sunscreen. Tons of research spanning the entire world and all different population sizes and types over literally decades shows that applying sunscreen is extremely effective in preventing skin cancer. Just one example, an article published by Stanford shares data from a randomized controlled trial in Australia, which is a very influential study that's published all over the place, linked in the show notes as usual. But this trial, found that daily use of sunscreen reduced the incidence of melanoma by 50%, a data point the U.S. Skin Cancer Foundation supports with its own research. But, like, there's a lot of data behind the efficacy of sunscreen, and that's not actually the debate here. Most people actually agree, even like sunscreen slanderers agree with this research and seem to broadly accept it. So, for the sake of time, I'm just not going to bore you with it. The bottom line is that sunscreen dramatically reduces the incidence of skin cancer, both melanoma and non-melanoma varieties. So, let's talk about what the debate actually is, which is the sort of ancillary side effects that sunscreen may or may not be having on our physical health, namely by way of potential carcinogens, endocrine disruptors. And in order to have this conversation fully, we are going to go back in time just a little bit and do like a teeny tiny history on sunscreen, because I think it's important to understanding the context and like the full point of what I'm trying to tell you. Modern sunscreen was invented by Swiss chemist Franz Gruyter and became widely available in the US in 1946. And then in 1962, same guy invented the SPF, or sun protection factor, rating scale to measure the efficacy of sunscreen products against the harmful effects of UV radiation. Fun fact, before 1946, there were two sort of less appealing versions of sunscreen that were invented. One by the original founder of the company that we now know as L'Oreal, and the other by a World War II airman. Both formulas have been tweaked a little bit over time, obviously, because like a billion years later. And both formulas are actually still available to purchase today. In fact, they might sound familiar. One is called Ombre Solaire, and it's sold by Garnier, which is owned by L'Oreal. And the other one is called Coppertone. So that's kind of just like a fun fact, a little moment of levity in this annoying fucking conversation. Anyway, since Gruyter did the big sunscreen and SPF shebang in 1946 and 1962, sunscreen has blown up and become widely popular, widely used, widely available for purchase. And in 1978, the FDA started regulating it. But this is the part of the timeline when things start to get kind of funky. In 2008, a study was published sharing evidence that sunscreen was playing a role in the bleaching of coral reefs. Now, this was happening because humans wearing sunscreen at the beach would go in the water, and the organic ultraviolet filters in the sunscreen triggered a latent viral reaction in the coral, leading to the rapid and complete bleaching of said coral. And the bleaching of hard coral leads to, and I'll read this directly from the study because I don't want to mess it up, The bleaching of hard coral leads to negative impacts on biodiversity and functioning of reef ecosystems and their production of goods and services. This increasing worldwide phenomenon is associated with temperature anomalies, high irradiance, pollution, and bacterial diseases. At this point, I would like to pause because, as we know, humans are not coral. So, yes, it's possible that certain organic UV filters and sunscreens are bad for the environment, which is crucial information if peer reviewed and conclusively proven true. But we are specifically talking about human health today. So, there's that. I'm not going to pretend that the environment doesn't have impact on human health. I'm actually a huge climate change believer and I hate climate change deniers and I'm real big on protecting the environment. But that is not our conversation today. And yes, the environment is having implications for human health, but we're having a different conversation. So I'm just like not going to spend that much more time on that. But more relevant here from this 2008 situation is the phrase organic UV filters, which is going to come up a bunch in the remainder of the episode. Essentially, organic ultraviolet filters refer to the chemicals in sunscreens that absorb UV radiation and prevent it from interacting with the skin. The other type of UV filters are mineral filters or physical filters, such as titanium dioxide and zinc oxide, which those physical filters, what they do is they reflect and scatter UV rays instead of absorbing them. But overall, it has the same effect of just preventing the UV radiation from interacting with and damaging the skin. Now, I just want you to hold on to that information and compartmentalize it for a few minutes while we kind of like get back to it. So in 2008, we start to learn that organic UV filters, aka the chemicals, are bleaching coral reefs. That research is validated by a few other subsequent studies, and by 2018, 10 years later, Hawaii became the first state to ban sunscreens, including two organic UV filter ingredients, oxybenzone and octinazate, in an effort to preserve the welfare of their marine ecosystems, in particular their coral reefs. Now, I think this gets misinterpreted a lot. Everyone's like, Hawaii banned these sunscreen ingredients. Yes, they banned those sunscreen ingredients to preserve their marine ecosystems. Just going to leave that there. But of course, that's when we get the kicker, which is the two studies that kind of spurred all of this sunscreen slander. In 2019 and 2020, two FDA studies are published in JAMA where researchers found that sunscreen ingredients were being absorbed into the bloodstream via the skin. And those ingredients were lingering in the bloodstream for up to a few days at a threshold that was higher than what the FDA cleared for potentially waiving toxicology screenings on the products. That's a lot of like sciencey words, so I'm going to like really bring this down so that we're all super clear on it. This basically means that at a threshold set by the FDA, in this case, I believe it is 0.5 nanograms per milliliter in plasma, up to that amount, the FDA can waive extra toxicology testing on products because the amounts are so small that they 100% don't have any effect on you and they don't really matter at all. But at 0.5 nanoliters or more, they want further testing just to make sure the levels are safe. They just want to they're like, at this level, we should just check. To be clear, abundantly clear, it does not necessarily mean that the levels are unsafe. It just means that the FDA requires an additional layer of testing at that level. The same way that if my dad walks into a liquor store, he might get ID'd because while he's probably over 21, they need to make sure. But you might laugh if you see my dad get ID'd at a liquor store because he's 62 years old. But they have to make sure. Dad, if you're listening, you don't look a day over 30. Now, here it starts to get a little tricky. And a lot of conflicting research, a lot of conflicting evidence, a lot of like back and forth, this, that, he said, she said. Research conducted in 2020 on the quote-unquote unsafe ingredients, in this case oxybenzone and octinazate, were associated with changes in hormone, kidney, and thyroid function. However, there was not enough evidence to prove causation, and overall, the ingredients were not conclusively proven to cause health problems in humans. So within this conversation, this specific study, it's like, oh, like these are unsafe. They might cause changes in hormone, kidney, and thyroid function, but we can't prove that it's actually these ingredients causing those things. We can't prove that it's happening at all in humans. So it's like conflicting already just within this one report. Then also in 2020, the National Toxicology Program found that exposing female rats to high levels of oxybenzone led to increased thyroid tumors and uterus enlargement, which kind of corroborates the theory from the previous study. Multiple studies published after this and the FDA reports do show that oxybenzone can alter the structure of the mammary gland and surrounding cells in mice, potentially leading to the development of tumors. Then in 2021, research was published by the European Commission Scientific Committee on Consumer Safety, saying that oxybenzone was found to have been absorbed not just into the plasma of sunscreen wearers, but also into their urine, serum, breast milk, and amniotic fluid, which, by the way, suggests that the chemical can pass through the placental tissue. The same research says that products should only be considered safe if oxybenzone makes up no more than 2.2% of their formula. For context, sunscreens in the US can contain up to 6% oxybenzone, and also that it can change your hormone, kidney, and thyroid function, like we said before, but that the evidence supporting that is actually inconclusive. So, like, all these studies are kind of like positing the same theories and saying, okay, like in rats, in mice, this is happening on some instances, but the evidence is inconclusive, and it's not conclusive that it's happening in humans. And also, in the studies, they're saying, like, this shouldn't make you refrain from wearing sunscreen because we know the proven effects of sunscreen, but, like, we should do some testing for sure. Okay, great. Now, also in 2021, like, a lot of these are happening all kind of one after another because the conversation is becoming trendy. We're getting a lot of questions coming out of these studies. So, like, people are researching it more. Awesome. Dr. Jennifer Lin, an assistant professor of dermatology at Harvard Medical School and co-director of the Melanoma Risk and Prevention Clinic at Brigham and Women's Hospital, said, quote, "There has been no conclusive evidence that oxybenzone is harmful to humans. Organizations that have raised concerns about oxybenzone typically cite studies done in rats, check, where the rats were actually fed oxybenzone orally. They were fucking eating it, you guys. It would take a human individual 277 years of using sunscreen to achieve the equivalent systemic dose that produced effects in these rat studies, according to a 2017 study in the Journal of American Academy of Dermatology." Okay. We all on the same page here? The rats who were experiencing these effects of hormone, thyroid, kidney changes and potential mammary glands, enlargement of the uterus, they were fucking eating sunscreen, you guys. They were eating oxybenzone. We're not doing that. Oh my God. So that's another thing to consider. Not only are we not rats, but we're also not eating sunscreen or even wearing it in quantities that are comparable to the scale in which it was administered in a lot of these studies. So as usual, guys, we're taking these things with a grain of salt. Now, there are several other ingredients I haven't really deep dived on that find themselves in sunscreen, a few of which are under similar scrutiny to oxybenzone, avobenzone, and octinazate. I'm not even going to go into them all because all the research sends the same message. Some animal testing, potential hormone disruption, potential breakdown into carcinogenic free radicals, potential contamination, and almost no human testing. Everything is inconclusive. Almost everything is just exclusively tested on rats and mice. One of the only human studies I can find was in 2020, and it was conducted on elementary and high school students in China, where some of the UV filtering ingredients either accelerated or delayed the onset and progression of puberty. To me, this is by far the most compelling evidence of hormone disruption in humans. But at this point, I think it is crucial to tell you that I don't think we can attribute all of this just to sunscreen, because some of these ingredients, including oxybenzone, patamate O, avobenzone, are also commonly found in all different kinds of makeup like BB creams, foundations, blush, bronzer, lipsticks, moisturizers, lotions, hairsprays, shampoos, conditioners, soaps, lip balms, aftershaves, shaving cream, hairstyling gel and mousse, toners, self-tanners, setting powders, sprays, serums, fragrances, nail polish removers, hand sanitizers. The list goes on for years. All of this stuff we put on our skin, and you're telling me that sunscreen is the problem because it contains these ingredients? Now you might be wondering, but Sam, what about all those sunscreens that were recalled a few years ago for having carcinogens in them? Let's talk about it. Happy to. Between 2021 and 2023, Neutrogena, Aveeno, Banana Boat, Coppertone recalled some of their sunscreen products after detecting trace amounts of benzene in them. Benzene is a known human carcinogen, and while the amounts were unlikely to cause any physical effects at all, the companies did voluntary recalls to ensure safety. I want to be abundantly clear when I say this. Benzene is not an ingredient of sunscreen. These batches of recalled sunscreen were contaminated during the manufacturing process, and the FDA actually launched an investigation into how and why some consumer products were being contaminated. I'm not saying it's chill, but I am saying it fucking happens. Lots of other food and products are recalled from time to time for contamination. Remember all those people who died from eating cold cuts? For example, in 2023, a bunch of other products, mostly aerosols, were recalled specifically for benzene contamination as well, including hand sanitizer, spray deodorant, athlete's foot, antifungal spray, and more. So it's not just sunscreen, and it's not because all sunscreens have carcinogens and benzene in them. That was a fucking accident. So overall, with organic chemical UV filters, there's research, mostly conducted on animals, a little conducted on humans, showing mostly correlation, a little alleged causation, between some chemical UV filters and hormone disruption. The recalls, I personally think, are irrelevant because they were a contamination issue, one-offs, and benzene is not inherently a part of sunscreen in general. So with organic chemical UV filters, the answer is let them do more research, and for now, don't panic. Don't be alarmist. Don't fall for the fucking TikTok trap. We are smarter than that, and we have more information than that. You may remember I also mentioned mineral UV filters or physical UV filters, which reflect and scatter UV light instead of absorbing it. Interestingly, the FDA recommended in 2021 that both titanium dioxide and zinc oxide, the two main physical UV filters in American sunscreens, be classified as, quote, generally recognized as safe and effective, short, GRACE. They're called GRACE, GRASE. I thought that was cute. The other ingredients didn't make the list, again, not because they're not GRACE, but because they want to do some more research. And we're going to let them. We're going to let them do that. That's their job. So to cut through the noise of what we do know, what we don't know, what we need to do more research on, what's correlation versus causation, what the FDA is doing, and more, I want to reiterate the most important part of this entire episode. We do not have any conclusive evidence that sunscreen is damaging the health, hormonal or otherwise, of humans at the population scale. We have been using it en masse for decades, and nothing conclusive has come of it. The quote-unquote dangerous chemicals found in sunscreens are also found in our makeup, our shower products, our hair products, and I don't hear any of y'all having the same crazy negative energy for your fucking lip liner. We do have broad and conclusive evidence that sunscreen effectively protects humans from UV radiation, which is categorized as a group 1 carcinogen. So, I'm not a medical professional, but you can probably guess my advice and the advice of literally every dermatologist I read quotes and research from, including, like I said, the literal authors of those first few studies that detected sunscreen ingredients in blood plasma. Even they said in their conclusion and the discussion of the research that the information presented therein should not cause anyone to refrain from wearing sunscreen. Wear the sunscreen. Let the scientists do their jobs. You are not smarter than them. You do not have the funding or resources or education that they have spent their lives pursuing. And I swear to God, if you let one random TikToker in a trailer at Burning Man convince you not to buy sunscreen, I will personally reach through this screen and smack you right now. That said, if you want to be abundantly cautious, my recommendation, opt for mineral sunscreens, free from ingredients like oxybenzone, octinazate, homosalate, octocrylene, and avobenzone. but always do your own research and buy what you are comfortable with, and speak to a medical professional if you want. I cannot sit here and tell you what's right for you. But what I can tell you is there's overwhelming evidence that sunscreen is good to use, and there is no conclusive evidence that sunscreen is bad to use. So the bottom line for now, until more information is learned through science, not through TikTok, is that we are going to wear the sunscreen. That's all. Thank you guys from the bottom of my heart for giving Caps Lock a chance. If you liked this episode, please stick around for more. We have some really interesting topics on the docket, including GLP-1s, the short and long-term health implications, life-changing habits, manifestation, hair loss, friend breakups, and so much more. Some will be solo episodes, and some will feature scientists, founders, experts, doctors, and other very cool, smart people. If there's a topic you want to hear about on Caps Lock, please send me a message. And lastly, follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Life in Caps Lock. Hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Leave me a rating or review, and tune in next Sunday at 8 a.m. for another episode of Caps Lock. Okay. Love you guys. Talk soon. Hell yeah. Wear the fucking sunscreen. Not me yelling at everybody. It's insane. It's so fucked up that there's TikTokers being like, don't wear sunscreen, it's a hormone disruptor. I'm sorry. You're telling everyone to get skin cancer because of a potential effect that is potentially found in rats after being fed gallons of sunscreen into their tiny bodies, which, by the way, breaks my heart. I know. Fucking